husband. When my daughter told me to find somewhere else to die, you're useless now, I packed my bags like the obedient mother I'd always been. 3 days later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office discovering that my supposedly loving husband had played the longest game of chess in history. Victoria was about to learn that sometimes the pawn becomes the queen. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how I went from homeless widow to the woman holding all the cards. Because, honey, this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. 2 months ago, I was Margaret Sullivan, devoted wife of 43 years and mother to one spectacularly ungrateful daughter. When Robert died of a heart attack at 71, I thought my world was ending. Victoria swooped in during my grief like a vulture in designer clothes, cooing about how difficult this must be for me. "Mom, you can't possibly manage this big house alone," she'd said, her voice dripping with fake concern. The stairs, the maintenance, all those memories. It's not healthy. I should have seen the calculation behind her concern. Victoria had always been Robert's favorite, his little princess who could do no wrong. When she married that investment banker Kevin and started producing grandchildren, Robert doted on them all. Meanwhile, I was just the woman who cooked and cleaned and kept everything running smoothly. After the funeral, Victoria became increasingly insistent about my situation. She'd bring Kevin over for family dinners where they'd corner me with real estate pamphlets and retirement community brochures. "Mom, these places are wonderful. You'd have people your own age, activities, no responsibilities." What they meant was no inheritance to split, no inconvenient mother to deal with. The final blow came last Tuesday. I'd been living in what Victoria now called our house for 6 weeks since Robert's death, still sleeping in the guest room because I couldn't bear to pack up our bedroom. Victoria arrived unannounced with Kevin and 2 large suitcases. "Mom, we've made a decision. Kevin got the promotion, and we need to move into town immediately. This house is perfect for us." I stared at her, not quite comprehending. "Move in? But this is my home." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the cold calculation underneath. "Actually, Mom, according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the investments, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Victoria, surely there's been some mistake." "No mistake. Dad knew I'd take better care of his legacy than you ever could. You never understood money or investments. You were just the wife, just the wife." 43 years reduced to those 3 words. That's when she delivered the killing blow. "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." I packed my things in a daze, 43 years of marriage fitting into 2 suitcases and a small box of photos. Victoria watched from the doorway, checking her watch like I was making her late for something important. "There's a nice senior complex on Maple Street," she offered with the enthusiasm of someone recommending a decent restaurant. "Very affordable. I'm sure they have openings." Affordable. My daughter was inheriting $33 million, and she was suggesting I check into what was essentially a welfare facility for the elderly. Kevin loaded my suitcases into their BMW with the efficiency of someone disposing of garbage. "Margaret, you'll love having your independence again," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "No more worrying about house maintenance or property taxes. No more home," he meant. As we drove away, I watched my house, Robert's house, Victoria's house now, disappear in the rearview mirror. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 4 decades making that house a home, hosting Victoria's birthday parties, nursing Robert through his illness, maintaining every detail he cared about. Now I was being driven to a budget motel like an unwanted guest who'd overstayed her welcome. The Sunset Inn was exactly what you'd expect from a place charging $49 a night. Thin walls, thinner towels, and a carpet that had seen better decades. Victoria handed me $200 in cash like she was tipping a hotel maid. "This should cover you for a few days while you get settled," she said. "I'll have Kevin transfer some money into your account once we sort through Dad's paperwork." Some money. From my own inheritance. After they left, I sat on the sagging mattress and tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 3 hours, I'd gone from grieving widow to homeless senior citizen. The woman I'd raised, loved, and sacrificed for had discarded me like an expired prescription. But as I sat there in that depressing motel room, something began nagging at me. Robert had always been meticulous about his affairs, obsessively organized about important documents. He'd shown me the will years ago, explaining his wishes, making sure I understood everything. And I was absolutely certain that's not what it had said. Robert had been many things. Traditional, sometimes stubborn, occasionally patronizing about money matters. But he wasn't cruel. The man who'd held my hand through my mother's death, who'd surprised me with flowers every anniversary, wouldn't have left me destitute. The next morning, I used the motel's Wi-Fi to search for Robert's attorney, Harrison Fitzgerald, the same lawyer who'd handled our house purchase and various business matters over the years. His office was downtown, a 20-minute bus ride that cost me precious cash but felt necessary. Harrison Fitzgerald was a distinguished man in his 70s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. When his secretary announced that Mrs. Sullivan was here about her husband's estate, he looked genuinely surprised. "Margaret, my dear, I was wondering when you'd come in. I tried calling your house several times, but Victoria said you were traveling." Traveling. That's what my daughter had told him. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I need to ask you about Robert's will." He looked puzzled. "Of course. Didn't Victoria provide you with your copy?" I gave her the original and several copies after the reading. My stomach dropped. There was a reading? "Margaret, you were supposed to be there. Victoria said you were too distraught, that she'd handle everything and make sure you received your inheritance." The blood drained from my face as the reality hit me. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I was never told about any reading. Victoria told me she inherited everything." Harrison Fitzgerald's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. He reached for a thick file folder, his movements suddenly urgent. "Margaret, that's impossible. Your husband's will is very specific about your inheritance." He pulled out a document I recognized, Robert's neat signature at the bottom, witnessed and notarized. But as Harrison began reading, I realized Victoria had lied about everything. "I, Robert James Sullivan, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved wife Margaret Ann Sullivan the following: our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave her 70% of all financial assets, investments and accounts, totaling approximately $23 million. My head started spinning. $23 million. The house, 70% of everything. Harrison continued reading, his voice growing more serious. To my daughter Victoria Sullivan Hayes, I leave $10 million, to be held in trust with distributions beginning on her 45th birthday, contingent upon her treatment of her mother following my death, contingent upon her treatment of me. Robert had known. Somehow, he'd known exactly what Victoria would try to do. "Mr. Fitzgerald," I whispered, "Victoria told me I inherited nothing. She moved into my house. She gave me $200 and suggested I find a senior facility." The elderly lawyer's face flushed with anger. "Margaret, what Victoria has done is called elder abuse and fraud. She's committed multiple felonies. But she had legal documents. She showed me papers. Forged, most likely, or documents from an earlier draft. Your husband updated his will 6 months before his death, specifically because he was concerned about Victoria's attitude toward money and her sense of entitlement." The room was spinning. All those times Victoria had dismissed my opinions, talked over me during family dinners, rolled her eyes when I tried to contribute to conversations about their expensive vacations or Kevin's business deals. Robert had been watching, evaluating, making decisions. "There's more, Margaret. The trust provision for Victoria specifically states that if she fails to treat you with respect and dignity following my death, the entire $10 million reverts to you instead." I stared at him in shock. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying your daughter just cost herself $10 million. Her inheritance is now yours as well. You're not inheriting $23 million, Margaret. You're inheriting $33 million, plus the house and all personal property." The irony was so perfect it was almost funny. Victoria had been so eager to claim her inheritance that she'd triggered the exact clause designed to protect me from her greed. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Harrison smiled, and for the first time since Robert's death, I saw genuine warmth directed at me. "Now, my dear, we call the police about the fraud." And then we call Victoria and inform her that she's about to receive the shock of her life. Can she fight this? With what money? She's about to discover that every account she thought she controlled actually belongs to you. Every investment, every bank account, every asset except your house is frozen pending investigation of her fraudulent activities. I thought about Victoria in my house, probably already planning renovations, shopping for new furniture with money she thought was hers. Kevin was probably calculating how the inheritance would affect his investment portfolio. They had no idea that in about 6 hours, their entire world was going to implode. Harrison Fitzgerald's office became command central for what he cheerfully called Operation Justice. He contacted the police, the banks, and a private investigator while I sat in his leather chair, still processing the magnitude of Victoria's deception. The forged documents are quite sophisticated, Detective Rodriguez explained as she reviewed the fake will Victoria had shown me. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime. Someone planned this carefully. You think Victoria had help? I asked. Almost certainly. Creating convincing legal forgeries requires specific knowledge and connections. We'll need to investigate whether Kevin or someone in his financial network was involved. Within 2 hours, every account had been frozen. Victoria's credit cards, linked to what she thought were her new inheritance accounts, were declined. The house utilities, which she'd already transferred to her name, were suspended pending ownership verification. My phone rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, where are you?" "There's some kind of mix-up with the bank accounts. They're saying Daddy's assets are frozen." "Hello, Victoria. I'm sitting in Harrison Fitzgerald's office. You remember him? Daddy's attorney, the one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling." Silence. Then, "Mom, I don't know what you think you discovered, but I discovered that you're a liar and a thief, sweetheart. I also discovered that your father was much smarter than either of us realized. You don't understand. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing all that money. You've never had to deal with investments or, I understand perfectly. You forged legal documents, committed fraud, and threw your 67-year-old mother out of her own house because you thought I was too stupid to notice." Her voice turned sharp, desperate. "Mom, you're confused. The grief has been overwhelming, and someone is obviously taking advantage of your emotional state." The audacity was breathtaking. Even caught red-handed, Victoria was trying to manipulate me. "Victoria, dear, let me clarify something for you. Not only did you never inherit anything, but your actual inheritance, the $10 million your father left you, is now mine as well, thanks to a lovely clause he included about treating me with dignity and respect." "That's impossible. Detective Rodriguez is sitting right here if you'd like to discuss the impossibility of fraud charges with her." The phone went quiet. I could almost hear Victoria's mind racing, calculating, searching for an angle. "Mom, please, can we meet somewhere and talk about this reasonably? I'm sure we can work something out." "Oh, we'll definitely be meeting soon. At the courthouse, when you're arraigned. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter." Something cold and final crystallized in my chest. "Watch me." I hung up and looked at Harrison, who was beaming with approval. "How long before she's arrested?" "Detective Rodriguez has enough evidence for a warrant. They'll pick her up this evening." "And Kevin?" "His financial records are being subpoenaed. If he participated in creating those documents, he'll face charges too." My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Mom, please don't do this. Think about the grandchildren." I showed the message to Detective Rodriguez, who smiled grimly. "Emotional manipulation. Classic behavior pattern for this type of crime." I typed back, "I'm thinking about them. They deserve to see what happens when you steal from family." 20 minutes later, Kevin called. "Margaret, surely we can resolve this privately. Victoria made some poor decisions, but involving the police seems excessive." "Kevin, did you help her forge those documents?" That's not." "Margaret, you have to understand the pressure Victoria was under. She was worried about your mental state, your ability to handle large sums of money." "So that's a yes." "It wasn't malicious. She genuinely believed she was protecting you. By throwing me out of my house and telling me to find somewhere to die?" Kevin was quiet. "Kevin, here's what's going to happen. You're both going to be arrested. You're both going to face federal fraud charges. And I'm going to be sitting in my house, watching it all unfold." "Margaret, please. Be reasonable. I was reasonable for 43 years. It didn't work out well for me. The police arrested Victoria at 8:30 p.m. while she was having dinner at Le Bernardin, apparently celebrating her inheritance with Kevin and another couple. According to Detective Rodriguez, she screamed about false arrest and demanded to call her lawyer, who turned out to be Kevin's golf buddy and had no experience with criminal law. Kevin was arrested at his office the next morning. The forensic accountant had traced the forged documents to a printing company Kevin's firm used for creating fraudulent investment prospectuses. Apparently, my son-in-law had quite the criminal resume that Victoria either didn't know about or chose to ignore. I spent my first night back in my house in 43 years, sleeping in the master bedroom. Victoria had already moved her belongings into the space, replacing Robert's careful organization with her chaos of designer clothes and expensive cosmetics. I packed everything into garbage bags and left them on the front porch. Let her collect them when she makes bail. The house felt different now, not because Robert was gone, but because I was finally seeing it as mine. For decades, I'd maintained it as Robert's sanctuary, designed around his preferences, his needs, his vision of how we should live.